people who have a hard time using slide decks as a medium to tell a good argument or story or control an audience's attention and sequence and build something logical or emotional even is that they fight that constraint. They to your point, try to cram too much text in it. They don't think about, hey, I have a visual and a headline that needs to be short and data and a chart or something all working together to make a point and to build a story and sequence and deliver an argument.
Hello, and welcome to the Misadventures in Marketing podcast, presented by the American Marketing Association, San Francisco chapter. I'm Steve Haney, a fractional go-to-market executive in Silicon Valley.
And I'm Peter Farago, a high-tech marketing executive in the Bay Area. Each week, Steve and I come together to talk about all things in high-tech marketing.
We share our own experiences running marketing teams with a special focus on technology startups. We talk about our successes, our failures, what worked and what didn't. We also bring on our CMO friends and other marketing colleagues to the show every once in a while, and hopefully we can impart some wisdom along the way. Peter, here we go again. How are you, sir?
Excellent. It's a good week. How about you?
Just been doing a lot of digital housekeeping. I've had a few endemic problems with various services that I use that I cleaned up. And so they're all functioning better now. And yeah, just makes life a lot easier and go a lot smoother when all your life hacks are coordinated and in place. Peter, what about your tech news of the week?
OpenAI announced that they're going to test ads on the free and the go tiers of their products in the US. So it's been either completely free or a subscription to date, usually based on consumption and maybe level of model that you have access to. They're saying the CPMs are around $60. So that's like, I don't know, 3 times what Meta is charging. And that, in order to test or to buy in as an advertiser, you've got to be spending at least $200,000. This kind of reminds me of when Steve Jobs was trying to bring advertising into iAd was the big effort, and they had a very high ante. But users can click on this ad and have a conversation with the brand. I don't know how exciting that is, but that is kind of a new interaction or ad format if you think about it. Maybe for podcasts, this is interesting, right? So like if the medium ends up becoming a conversation and not just an ad, or a page, is that interesting? I don't know.
Sounds very cool, very fascinating. My tech news bite for the week is Apple has bought the rights for F1, Formula One racing in the US. And it's completely integrated into Apple TV with a ton of great programming. But what I think is most fascinating about this is Apple has already done a lot of innovative stuff in terms of broadcasting Major League Soccer because they're technologists, right? So the way they're using the cameras, the kind of content they're doing, and supposedly with F1, they're going to take it to a whole new level with the cameras in the cars. A lot of this stuff is being done already, but they also have this, what they call a spatial computer. It's a headset called the Vision Pro, and they're going to have special programming for it where you're going to be able to obviously look up and see the screens, the virtual screens in front of you with this computer on your face. But then you're going to have a tabletop view of the race, kind of like a God view, where you're sitting up above and you can see the cars racing around. And I think this is what's interesting is these tech companies who are very forward thinking in terms of how content gets distributed and displayed, take over these, other kinds of sports brands. The way they deliver that, I think, is going to lead to a lot of cool stuff and fascinating innovation. Google in Chrome with Gemini it's basically agentic now, and it can look at all the open tabs you've got in a Chrome window, and you can tell it just to go out and do stuff, and it does it for you. I've been working doing also employing it for a client that's made, some prospecting chores just way easier and more efficient, and, of course, helping fill out data and giving perspectives. I live in my Rolodex. I'm in the Apple ecosystem, so I use Apple Contacts, and that database, which is now about 1,400 people strong, are just all the contacts, all the people I've worked with over so many years, and it's always been flaky. I've never been able to solve the underlying database corruption in that because it just wasn't working properly within the system. And obviously, this central database of people that's very important to what I do in life is it's on my iPhone, it's on my iPad, it's on my MacBook. It is my contact management system. And Gemini helped me fix it. I mean, the tech, I'd say every 6 months or so for the past 10 years, I would try to go in and do a Google search, and you'd go on the forums and see what other people did. With Gemini, it took me about 2 weeks of concerted effort because I couldn't focus on it all at once, right? I had to go back and forth and spend an hour here, an hour there. And it's amazing when this central thing to your whole ecosystem and the way you do business actually works and isn't flaky. It's made doing business a lot easier. So, how about you, Peter? How have you been using AI to supercharge the Farago marketing machine?
I'm thinking about as at an early stage marketing team of one with some contractors. How do I get to like more automation? I thought about this a while ago, but I've never really done much about it. I'm thinking about it again, but it's this idea that you have recurring tasks or workflows done by agents for you. It gets back to the
Mhm.
idea of, are you hiring a number of agents, like thinking of them like people, and then how do you get them to do work where it's not just going back and forth with editing, but actually they'll do some recurring tasks and deliver them to you unprompted. The tip I have there is, the first thing is you've got to think about it like a job description. You have to kind of think about exactly what you want them to do. This is how good chat prompts are created anyway. They're sort of like scenarios, and you tell the LLM the role they're playing. But competitive intelligence, for example, would be a good agent to have, where it can scan some websites or LinkedIn of competitors' activities, YouTube, G2 reviews, whatever you want to do. And Monday morning, it might give you a report in Slack before you've even had time to grab your coffee or something, right? So, if you can write it as a job description, you could probably build it as an agent. And that's something I've been thinking about.
We'd like to welcome a new segment onto the show. Every month or so, we're going to have Eric Widener, the CEO of Workbox, come onto the show and share a web agency minute and give us insight into the latest trends and topics that are affecting marketers uh, online and what they need to be paying attention to going forward. So, welcome, Eric. Thank you. And what do you have for us this week?
So the web agencies like ours are starting to think about what to tell our clients about their websites and AI, and how the LLMs are looking at their websites. And these clients are going to want their content referenced by the LLMs, right? So there are a bunch of issues with this. First off, it's very new. So a lot of people really don't understand it. So right now, we've got things like Google Analytics, Google Search Console, and there are other established players who can give you a lot of good data about your web properties, how you're getting traffic, how people see it, what's converting, all that kind of stuff, right? For the LLMs and AI, there are new services out there, but they're unproven, and there's really no industry standard yet. And that's okay. It'll sort itself out. The first one to do this so far is Microsoft, and they added something to Bing Webmaster Tools that gives you some insight into how the LLMs they're associated with reference and look at your web properties. So a lot of people aren't talking about it yet, but that's the first one of the really big guys to do it. We're also, and a lot of agencies are putting together basically an outline of what we think our clients should do to get to basically be attractive to the LLM so their content gets in there and they can beat the competition. It's just going to be really interesting because as we discussed, it's like, who's going to own this data? Who are you really working for? I mean, years ago, I made the joke that all of us digital marketers were really just working for Google, right? We're just trying to manipulate the system so people who are using Google will find our stuff and buy our stuff. And ultimately, are we going to be working for the LLMs? Everybody's worried about this. And we're trying to give them advice on what to do, and it's not so simple. It really isn't. My advice to everyone right now is, as usual, don't freak out. The standards that they're using for SEO and good websites help the LLMs already. So you may not have to do a whole heck of a lot just yet, but there are some best practices that are emerging. I'm sure that Marketing 101 will still matter, that the ability to break through the noise, keep your brand, create a brand that's strong. I think that stuff will never go away because we're still humans, and the LLMs will try to match that. They will go for the exciting, interesting, controversial, cool stuff that people are searching for. So people are still going to have to create brands that engage and are exciting and interesting and appropriate for their markets, regardless of the LLMs or anything. I think that will never go away.
This episode of Misadventures in Marketing is brought to you by the American Marketing Association, San Francisco. AMASF is a member-run organization that has been serving the Bay Area marketing community for over 80 years. Through programs, events, workshops, and discussions that introduce the latest trends and developments in the industry, to networking events that bring together the best marketing minds in the region, AMASF diligently works to foster professional learning and career advancement opportunities for all of its members. Joining is easy. To become a member of AMASF, go to amasf.org. That's amasf.org, and click on Get Involved on the top menu, then become a member. For just $199 a year, you'll get access to events, resources, credentialed learning opportunities, and a community of fellow marketers who will help you expand your network and advance your career. The AMASF membership, the investment you make for the career you love. Pitch please. We are talking about pitch decks, marketing decks. Obviously, there are a few very basic rules there, right? No more than 10 slides. Yeah, and then the 35-point font or something like that.
Oh yeah,
And
legible.
then,
Don't get right. Don't create like a little brochure with tiny fonts. Yeah.
It's not a Word document. It's not a word processing document. It's a deck. And so what you have on the deck should just be an aid to the speaker and what they're pitching, right? And give more detail. I mean, it's almost as if the slides are a footnote to reference more detail on what the person giving the presentation is saying. Now, don't get me wrong. I realize there are a lot of situations where the decks are meant to be read. Like, I've worked with a lot of startups, and I've been in a lot of startups where especially for a pitch deck. We need to send this out to an investor. So everything needs to be in there, right? You can't just have one page with a graphic that says mission and then expecting that the founder would be there to say, this is our, you have to write it all out, right? Because this is being sent as a document to an audience that is going to read it and not have it presented to them. So I get that. But I think for the most part, you just need to avoid a lot of verbiage. And again, the bullet points need to be bullet points. They should not be long paragraphs of explanation. They need to be bullet points and they need to be succinct. And then just understand that you need to delight with the graphics as much as inform with the text that is on the page. Understanding that each slide is part of a narrative. I've gone back to this notion over and over and over on this podcast about you're telling a story. So let's say you've got 10 slides and it's the brand positioning. Let's say your CEOs come to you and say, we just need to get together a brand platform. Doesn't need to be fancy, but we need to just have the basics in place. That's 10 slides, right? And maybe you do a mood board with the executive team in the beginning to kind of get all the founders' impressions of what they believe they are and who they are and what the company is and what it's trying to do. And then you just lay that out and you're telling a story, in this case, about the brand. If it's a sales deck, you're telling a story about the product and the problem it's going to solve for the customer. And you just need to understand that each slide in that deck, whether it's 5 slides or 10 slides or 20 slides, just make sure it's not just like factoids, that it's actually part of a narrative arc over the 15 slides, for example, that you're telling. Because they can always take the factoids from the slides if they want. But if they look at the deck overall, you want to make sure you're taking them on a journey from the beginning and the end, and that you're telling a story, because at the end of the day, you're putting together the deck to persuade somebody to take an action. Always, right? If it's a sales deck, it's to get them to the next, step in the sales process. If it's a positioning document, it's to ensure that people understand at the end of it that, this is how you think about the product and the company or whatever. And I just think it's important to keep that in mind. Keep the bullet points, make it graphically beautiful, and ensure that it's part of an overall narrative that encompasses all the slides in the deck.
Normally, when I think about a slide deck as a medium, usually you start with fundamental questions like, who is the audience?
Right.
What do they care about?
Yeah.
What we're trying to explain or argue or prove. And then people who have a hard time using slide decks as a medium to tell a good argument or story or control an audience's attention and sequence and build something logical or emotional even is that they fight that constraint. They to your point, try to cram too much text in it. They don't think about, hey, I have a visual and a headline that needs to be short and data and a chart or something all working together to make a point and to build a story and sequence and deliver an argument, right? First of all, most of my slides titles, I never have a slide title that wraps. It's usually 5 to 8 words max. Usually the slide title tells the point I wanted to tell. And then at the end of the slide deck, not only do I flip through it really fast to see that everything is pixel perfect in the same place, again, because I've been marketing, I think, but also that the titles progress in telling a story. So I reread titles at the end and I flip through it and I'm reading it at different levels, right? There's the deck and what I decide to put on each slide and the progression of story I'm delivering, but I also have to narrate over it. So like to me, I have to think about what point am I going to make? What am I going to say? What am I not going to say? I don't use a speaker notes section. If I use speaker notes, it's putting details in there that I think if I'm building for someone else, they need to know. Like I might have a 38% increase and then I have to put like the source in the speaker's notes just so that if someone goes, how did you get 38%? It's like, oh, the work is here. But I will say I don't love to have to, there are people who are professional speech writers. And I also have to say that speech writing for someone else is hard. I can write my own speech. I can deliver it with a slide deck. When I do for someone else, I do have to think differently about how I build that slide. And then if you do it, say, for a sales team, then it's a lot more generic building blocks and modular. But anyway, getting back to your original point, I don't think you're off at all. I think there's something unique about the medium, the storytelling capability, the argumentation, the sequencing, that the multimedia aspect of it that makes it very hard for people to use well.
Yeah. Well, and I think the majority of people don't want to be the center of attention, but the whole point is that you are the center of attention. All of these packages have a webcam feature now where you can implant your face in the slide, and I've done a few of those where I leave space. I usually do it in the lower right hand corner because I want them focusing on me and what I'm saying, because I don't just read the slide. Nobody should just read what's on the slide, right? They need to be referencing on there, but they should be the center of attention and they should be the ones delivering the message because you're a human connecting to another human. And I think, to your point, that's what's really important, is understanding that, the slides, again, if this is really technically a presentation, meaning you're presenting to a broad audience, whether online or in person, you're the one who should be the center of attention, not the slide. Um, Again, the slide should kind of be back up to you as the speaker delivering it. And again, the way you can do that online and digitally and asynchronously is to use one of these little, features where you've got the webcam video on the slide and you're going through. I think that's a great point to end on. I'm going to read us out. Okay.
Read us out, Steve.
All right. We want to thank you, our audience of Misadventures in Marketing, for listening. We want to thank our editors, Lorenzo Fernandez Kopek at Peak Down Studio and Brian Douglas at Creative Comms for making us sound and look great. We want to thank our marketing manager, Ian Robinson Lambert, for getting the word out. We want to thank the amazing Julianne Bernalis for being our consulting producer and directing the aspects of this podcast in the best possible way. We couldn't do without Julianne. Of course, the amazing Rinita Datta for driving our content calendar and our topics and our market research. And of course, we want to thank Thomas Moyer, president of AMA San Francisco, for presenting this podcast. Would also like to thank our sponsor, Workbox, for their support of Misadventures in Marketing.